So, we are going to be talking about Street Fighter, specifically what it would be like in the real world. Okay? This is coming from a place of absolute love. I love the Street Fighter franchise. I'm one of 9 people in the Western Hemisphere who has all 8 issues of the Tokuma comics from the 1990s. I love the Street Fighter franchise. It informed my first books, the Crossworld Saga. Great stuff. Absolutely love it. Chun-Li is the first lady of video games. I'm sorry, Samus Aran. Orion, whatever the hell her name is. But that's where we are. Video games are a lot of fun, and they are a tremendous art form that have, like all art forms, they blur the lines between reality and fantasy. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that. Roy Jones, I think, Roy Wood Jr., Roy Wood Jr. on the, did a comedy sketch where he talked about Street Fighter being the least violent video game ever because nobody actually dies. In every other video game you can possibly imagine, somebody dies, but in Street Fighter, you not only everybody survives, but you get life advice afterwards. They beat the tar out of each other and then they say, go home and be a family man. That is valuable advice, and it's right, it's a great comedy sketch, and I recommend you check it out later, not now. Please don't do it during the panel. But, that said, there is a large problem, especially in the Western world, of mistaking what we see in art for reality. We have had a long tradition, especially in the martial arts community, for mistaking action movies and kung fu movies for that being what real fighting is like. We have a long history of glorifying war and violence, and then when people find themselves in a dangerous situation, they realize how terrible this kind of stuff can be. And so I wanted to take this opportunity to explore some of the realities of what it would be like to be in the Street Fighter world if it existed in our real world. And not to get too terribly dark, because anytime you talk about fighting, it can get dark. But to give you a bit of background on me, my name is Robert V. Aldrich. I am a novelist and writer. I'm here promoting my newest book, Rest of the Time. I have a website, teachthesky.com, where I publish a new short story the first Friday of every month. You're welcome to check it out, including a new one that went live today. That said, for the purposes of this panel, I am a brown belt, black belt, ABD in Kajikembo under the Dragon's method, and I have a background in Wing Chun and Kempo, and a whole bunch of other martial arts, just a smattering of different things. I'm also a strength and conditioning coach for a martial arts fight team that has never actually turned out a fighter because they keep getting poached from us, but that's neither here nor there. And I'm a lifelong lover of martial arts and the martial arts community. And so the World Warrior Tournament as depicted in Street Fighter is just a lot of fun to nitpick for me. That's where this is coming from. So, before we begin, do we have any questions? Fantastic. During this, I'm going to talk about the realities of fighting and martial arts. I'm going to talk about the realities of running a martial arts tournament. And then I'm finally going to, at the very end of this, talk about who would win the World Warrior Tournament in real life. And the answer is actually blatantly, terrifyingly obvious. And we all know who it is, we just don't want to admit it. And we'll get to that in a second. So, first up, why are street fighting tournaments and martial arts tournaments so popular in fiction? Because they're not that popular in real life. If you go to any martial arts tournament in the United States, and frankly the world, the attendance is really, really low. They even referenced this in the Cobra Kai TV series, how attendance was dropping off. Martial arts tournaments are not that big. The UFC, probably the most successful martial arts league in the world today, left behind the tournament format and went to a sporting format. We'll talk about that in a little bit later. So why are tournaments so popular in fiction and in art? There's several reasons for that. One, in the Western world, it evokes the gunfighter at the OK Corral. It invokes the duelist mentality that we have from European lore and then cowboy lore here in America. And in Asian cultures, it invokes the old world martial arts tournaments that you used to have back in the day, which may or may not have ever actually existed. Excuse me. So yeah, it also allows us to get into the locker room debates of who would win, the Kung Fu man or the Karate man, the boxer or the wrestler, things like that. We even have this today. Even a few years ago, you had a TV show called The Deadliest Warrior where they supposedly matched up people from throughout history. In art, especially narratively based arts like movies and video games, it becomes a really convenient way to have people fight. Trying to contrive different reasons to have lots of different people fight in a short term, in a short space, in a short narrative construct, it becomes really tricky and really crazy, and it gets to a point where you're like, you know what, they all want to be champion. Okay? The contrivances that you have to see in professional wrestling are complicated, and that's supposed to be a sport. Oh, yeah. All right. Excellent. So I want to talk about the differences between a tournament and, as we know it today, a sporting tournament, a sporting league, and street fighting. Street fighting is going to be defined as informal, unannounced, one-on-one fights. This is essentially a mugging. This is essentially violence. And there's a certain romanticism to it in especially martial arts culture. People talk about martial arts techniques in the context of, does it work on the street? What street? Where? Why are you on that street? Why don't you move or go to another street? I've known some people who talk about their experiences with violence, and they're far more accomplished at it than I am. And they talked about they got mugged like 8 times in 1 year. I'm like, after a certain point, that's on you. Like, you need to walk home a different route or something. I don't want to turn this conversation terribly political, but there is also a tremendous patriarchal modality when we talk about violence. When most people talk about violence, when most people talk about street fighting and martial arts and is this going to work, they say, does this work on the street? And invariably they talk about, will this work like in a bar fight? A bar fight is not a fight. That is a really poorly put together sporting event. If it's you and one person in a bar for like 5 minutes jawing at each other and talking trash, and then y'all go out into the parking lot to settle this, like, you just entered into a very, very poorly thought through sporting event. That's not a fight. Most people who actually have to use like fighting techniques, statistically speaking, off of the very, very shoddy data we have to work with, are usually dealing with romantic partners and intimate partners or family members. A lot of times the violence that you will see in the real world will be between a parent and a child, a husband and a boyfriend, or a wife and a girlfriend, things like that. And that's about as dark as I really want to get, because it can get dark very fast. But violence is ugly and violence is terrible. And so to try to buffer against that, we go with this kind of slightly structured mentality that you're going to have some kind of hierarchy, that there's going to be, it's going to be like the college basketball system, that you're going to have 32 fighters and that it'll be a single elimination tournament. Cool, great. But then we get into the problem the UFC ran into, which is A, you have no idea how long the fights are going to go. B, you don't actually know who's going to win. And if your headline fighter gets taken out in the first round, that done be a problem. And C, if you don't even know who's going to show up, and this entire tournament is just designed to show off your martial art, and somebody who can beat your martial art shows up, then you have to restructure things fast. But us Ken Shamrock fans are not bitter at all. Yeah, go back and watch UFC 1. Shoes are illegal, but belts aren't. Come on now. Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to open old wounds there. I can hear the comment section of the video going crazy already. I just hear the typing going like, it was totally legit. Anyway, I detoured there. So this is going to invoke the karate tournaments in the US in the 1960s and 70s. Karate got really hot there for a minute. And you have single elimination tournaments like the Long Beach tournament where Bruce Lee introduced Jeet Kune Do, things like that. Cool, great. So There's going to become a difference where something like the UFC is going to move away from the tournament and go to the sporting league. Now, the idea behind the sporting league is you're not going to have a single elimination tournament. You'll have non-title fights that will help move a fighter up, but quite frankly, individuals will basically be chosen for their chance to compete for a belt. And you can start getting into a lot of politicking. You can start getting into a lot of who won versus who did not win. Is this fighter equal to another? And that goes back to a problem you have with the tournament. If you have a single elimination tournament and one guy is able to just walk through everybody else, whereas another guy struggles, is that because one person is better than the other? Or is it because the people that guy fought are just not that good? How do you balance that kind of thing out? As we see with other sports, NBA, NCAA, NFL, things like that, just because you're the number 1 and the number 16 doesn't mean you can't still lose. And if you've got 50,000 people in the arena who came to see number 1 win and number 1 gets taken out in the first round, a lot of those people may leave. That's a problem. You can't control that. And so you move towards the sporting league modality like the UFC did. There's a lot of reason for that. Nevertheless, that does take us away from the street fighting aspect of it. I've kind of rambled on there a little bit. So, great. So, we like fighting games, we like street fighting and single elimination tournaments in narratives because we can follow the hero and we know who's going to win. It is set by the promoter kind of thing, or the storyteller or the writer. The real world, too chaotic, it's harder to predict. If we were just going to root for the winner, that'd be great, but we never root for the winner, we root for our favorite, whoever that may end up being for whatever reason. I like Ken Shamrock purely because he was in the WWE, and for no other reason. But yeah, so we're going to take a step in another direction. That is to talk about the real world violence component of it. Now, not necessarily talking about the brutality, or not necessarily talking about the ugliness, but simply the difficulty of it. In the 1990s and early 2000s, the NFL had a wonderful study where they studied cranial traumatic encephalopathy, CTE, commonly known as concussions. For most of Western sports medicine, a concussion was considered a bad headache. If you had a concussion, you just needed to go sit down, maybe you just didn't play for the rest of the quarter and that was it, and then you went on with your day. Turns out that's not the case. Turns out a concussion is brain damage. Turns out if you get a bunch of concussions, you're not the same person anymore because your brain physically is not working the way it used to be. They've also learned that this applies to boxing. Concussions are bad and they're really, really serious. If you get knocked out, you probably have a concussion. It's not automatically the same thing, but it's a very close bet. And since in fighting games, you almost always go to a knockout, what does that mean? These people are getting serious brain damage regularly, often, so, yay. We get the same thing with things like broken bones. Fighting games, movies, video games, comic books, they shrug off a broken rib. If you've ever had a broken rib in real life, it hurts. You quit sports over that. Like, you quit a lot of things over that when you can't take a breath without pain. And in the action movies, they just kind of shrug it off. You don't do that in real life. Like, the number of NFL players who have played through a broken rib is a lot lower than you think, and for good reason. Because you can actually die that way. You can puncture your lung with the broken rib. But, that doesn't happen in video games. So, what else we got here? So talk about the fighting. Oh, another great thing. So let's say you're the hardest hardcore that ever hardcore, right? And you've got, you're squaring off with your opponent. You're better in every way. You beat your opponent to a pulp. Great. You can still break your hand. So it turns out your hand is made up of really tiny bones. and you're throwing your hand against one of the hardest surfaces in nature, that's an equation that you're going to lose. Now, you might mitigate this with gloves. Turns out, gloves may or may not make a punch more or less effective. Ask boxing. The gloves in boxing are absolutely designed to make the punches less effective. Why? Because if 50,000 people showed up for a fight and the fight's over in one round, they tend to demand their money back. The UFC found this out the hard way. UFC gloves are much, much smaller and provide much less protection. They are not there to protect your face. They are there to protect the hands. And even then, you can still break your hand. They have had fighters who have broken their hands training for a fight. And that's hitting pads that are supposedly soft. And you think punching somebody in the face is not going to run you the risk of breaking a bone in your hand? And guess what? You break a bone in your hand, you don't get to throw any more punches for 6 or 8 weeks. That means you can win the fight and still be out of the tournament. That will make people demand their money back. You don't see this in video games. So, there's a whole host of other variables at play there, but at the bottom line is the physical toll that is taken in a fight, even if you win, is very, very great. We love to laugh at somebody getting punched in the nose. It's funny in the right context. And in video games, you throw these face punches all the time. If you get punched in the nose, you never want that to ever happen again because it hurts. And if you've been punched in the nose and the guy's gonna do it again right now, you will do anything to keep it from happening. And it's not one of those things where it's like, you need to walk it off. Like, no! Getting punched in the face sucks. So why would you want to keep doing that? And again, that's not something you can just walk off. If, depending on the kind of damage done to your nose, you just don't get to breathe anymore. Like, you just have to breathe through your mouth for like the next week. That's not something you can just power through. All of this gets shrugged off to the side for fun video games and narrative, because that sucks. It would really suck if, like, in the 3rd round, Apollo beat up Rocky and they stopped the fight because of poor airway flow. And yet, that would be absolutely something that could and probably should have happened. So, but that's violence. Let's put all of that aside. Let's step all of that away. And let's just focus. Let's pretend, you don't have to deal with broken ribs and broken bones and all that other stuff. The World Warrior Tournament, as seen in Street Fighter, is still absurdly fictional for totally non-violent reasons. First of all, where does the tournament take place?
Everywhere.
Okay, could y'all be a little more specific? I don't want like everywhere. Thank you, Dr. Zola. But, okay, so different countries is the answer I was looking for, and I realized that was probably, I could have been more specific. What country does it occur in? Multiple countries. So if how about we just set up, we deal with a fight between Ryu and Dalsim, okay? So we've got Ryu in Japan. We've got Dalsim in India, okay? Who goes to meet who? So right off the bat, we have to have an organizer. Right off the bat, somebody's got to call up Ryu in that weird-ass temple that Gulkin left him and be like, hey, you want to come to India and fight a yogi? And if Ryu has any sense, he's going to be like, no, who is this? We're assuming that Ryu has a phone. That's right, that weird-ass hermit. So, and then you've got to start getting into, all right, so we've called Ryu. For whatever reason, Ryu's decided he's going to go. Okay, cool. So now we got to call up Dalsim like, hey, we got a Japanese guy that wants to come into town and beat you up. Are you cool with that? Who is going to even take that phone call? Okay, so we've arranged this fight. Now, what did we promise Ryu to make him come to India to beat up a guy he's never met? But shut up. Prove he's the strongest. You know, when he gets, that's great. Okay, so that's fine. Okay, so we said we're gonna run down to the trophy shop and we're gonna get you a little trophy that says world's strongest. And that's gonna entice Ryu. Cool, great. Now let's just pretend for a second, what if we're trying to get Ken instead? Ken's a multi-millionaire. He ain't gonna come out here unless we start flipping out cash, okay? So, all right, but let's pretend, okay, so we've got our little statue, we've got our little gold-plated statue, cool, great, it says world's strongest, great. Who paid for that? Okay, because those statues are expensive. I know, I've looked into buying one for myself because I have a tender ego and very little to bolster it. So Ryu has that little statue, somebody ponying up the cat. Okay, we know, Bill, my cousin, he just made one for us for free. Cool, great. Okay, so Ryu comes over here and he's gonna fight Dalsim. Great. Who's gonna pay for the airline ticket?
Corporate sponsorship.
Corporate sponsorship. What corporation? What are they getting? What? That's your answer for everything. They are worth 5 British pounds. The fact that so many of you got that reference really concerns me greatly. We all need to watch better movies. But, so, we've arranged a flight for Ryu to come to India to fight Dalsim. Now, what happens if Ryu says, wait a minute, I want to fly first class? Well, crap, we've got to fix that. So we've got a travel agent at play. Okay, we're going to pretend we've got a statue maker and a travel agent. All right, so what did we promise Dalsim that we would convince him to agree to let some Japanese dude he's never met fly to India to, and we're going to get to that in a second, to beat him up? No, we didn't offer enlightenment. He wants money. Dalsim fights for money. Now, granted, he's going to take that money and he's going to give it to orphan kids whose parents were killed in the war with Pakistan. But the point is, we've got to give him money. Where is that money coming? I swear to God, if you say Shadaloo, I will throw a Coke can at you. Okay? So we've got to have money for Dalsim. We've got to have money to pay for the statue. We've got to pay for the flight. We've got to arrange the flight. And then Ryu had to get all pompous and be like, no, I've got to fly first class. So we're going to fly Ryu from Tokyo to India. Where in India is Ryu going to land? Because Ryu is not going to land at Dalsim's temple. He's going to land at an airport. We're going to assume Ryu is not going to go straight from the airport to fight Dalsim. He is going to want to go see the sights. He is going to want a few days to go look around. He's never been to India before. He is going to want to see what everything's going on. People, this is a great culture. If you track the lineage of martial arts, you start with karate, which was Japanese, and then before that it was Kempo, which was Okinawan. I'm sorry, I can hear you typing now. Before it was Kempo, it was Kung Fu, which is Chinese. Before it was Kung Fu, it was Kali Pariyattu, which is Indian. So this is the home place of his martial art. And Ryu is Buddhist, isn't he? Maybe, we're not going to get into that. But the point is, so maybe he's got sites he's got to go see. So he wants to do some tours. So now we've got to pay for his tourist trip. He's got to go see the sights and everything. Plus, he's going to be there for a couple of days. He's got to acclimate to the altitude. He's got to get used to the weather because it's 119 goddamn degrees in India. So he's got to get used to that kind of thing. So now we're paying for a hotel stay. All right, fantastic. Oh, wait, Ryu doesn't have a passport. So we've got to have our travel agent arrange the passport and all of that. So we finally get Ryu to India to fight Dalsim. Great, fantastic. Who is going to certify the fight? So wait, who just said Bison? You shut the hell up. You're not allowed to talk for 5 minutes. So, who said Colonel Sanders? What? bystanders. Okay, I suppose we'll answer that. But here's the problem. So what if Ryu gets there and he's all jacked up and he's ready to fight? He's rested and everything because we put him up in a 3-star hotel. We're not going to go 4-star because the asshole wanted to fly first class. So and he's ready to go and Dhalsim's ready to go and Ryu's like, I'm going to win that statue. And Dhalsim's like, statue? What statue? What the hell, man? And Ryu's like, well, what are you fighting for? You're not fighting for the honor of being the strongest? Because apparently that's what Ryu's fighting for. And Dhalsim's like, no, I'm fighting for money. And Ryu's like, ha ha ha, you selfish person. Like, no, I'm going to feed kids with it. Ryu's like, wait, what? And Dhalsim's like, yes, I'm going to feed orphans who lost their parents in war. And Ryu's like, oh, damn, I don't want to do that. Like, really? Like how many are we talking? Like 50,000? Like, oh, damn, man. But listen, hey, what if I just like lose and then you get the money and the orphans get fed? And Dhalsim's like, I'm totally on board with that. And so Ryu and Dhalsim just like agree. Who is to say they didn't? Now, we're going to say there are bystanders who certify this fight because apparently Shadaloo is just circulating like questionnaires like, did you see a street fight today? Who actually won? Now maybe Ryu and Dhalsim pull everybody around and say, hey, listen guys, we're just between us, Dhalsim won. We cool with that? Okay, fantastic. Okay, so now we have to have an official on the ground. And it's got to be an official who is committed to fairness, because Dhalsim's going to say, hey, listen, 50,000 kids are going to be able to eat if I win. So we're just going to call this. And if that official says, no, y'all have to fight, Dhalsim's got a big, scary Japanese dude standing right behind him who's going to back him up on this. So now we've got to have an official who can handle himself if a guy who breathes fire and a guy who throws fire are getting ready to throw down. So now we've got to have an official with backup. We've got, at the very least, he's got to be packing heat, because this could go sideways real fast. All right? Now that's one fight. How many fights are there in the World Warrior Tournament? Now, obviously, the answer is, which Street Fighter game are we talking about? Are we going to pretend EX didn't happen? Are we going? Yes, we are. Okay, cool. Now, so let's pretend for a moment we're talking about Super Street Fighter 2, the greatest entry in the franchise. We're talking about 16 fighters. So that's 8 fights in the first round alone that we have to organize. That's 8 people we have to prepare. Now, if you've seen the Street Fighter movie, you know that the fights are certified by creepy-ass cyborg-looking dudes, but we're going to pretend that this is the real world, which means we have to hire people, and we have to make sure those people are confirmed and will report the accurate data. Now, we have to have travel agents who arrange all of this stuff. Now, people who work at the convention, how easy do you think that sounds? Anybody? See, they're so damn tired from organizing this stuff, and they're not even dealing with violence and like crossing time zones and all of that kind of thing. So now we've got travel agents, and now we've got all these people, and we still haven't talked about where this money is coming from. And don't say Shadaloo. Don't say Shadaloo. So all of this is going into it. So why would you have all this stuff? Now remember, Ryu wants that dumbass little statue, and Dhalsim wants cash. Well, what about Ken? Ken's just an egomaniac. He just wants his name on billboards. So now we've got to take out, billboards and everything else. Him and Johnny Cage, you just got to let everybody know that they're the best and that kind of thing. So how do you handle that kind of thing? That means that you've got to have a multi-person business in place just to organize this. There's none of that in the video game. Like, you could have an entire role-playing game outside of Street Fighter just on micromanaging the damn tournament. So, now, another thing we haven't certified, we haven't talked about, is that's assuming Ryu and Dhalsim get along and they're on board. What happens if we set up a fight between Blanca in Brazil and Guile in America? Okay? Because what's going to happen? So Guile wants, I don't know, whatever the hell Guile wants, more hair mousse. And Blanca wants whatever Blanca wants. Apparently it's like raw fish and a watermelon. What? Watermelon in a blender. I'm sure that joke was funny. And so we're going to put them together. All right, so we put them together, and we get the, we organize the fight, and we decide that they're going to fight, and we somehow sneak Blanca onto the tarmac of a military base. Because that sounds like a good idea. They couldn't have put that fight anywhere else, and all of Guile's buddies are going to be right here. That doesn't seem suspicious. If Guile loses, Blanca's getting his ass whipped by like 4 other guys. So, no, we've got all of that happening, and the taxi pulls up, and Blanca gets out. What's going to happen? Guile is going to shoot Blanca because a damn vampire just got out of the taxi. It's like, oh, crap. And here's the thing. Is that against the rules? Now, before y'all start and be like, yes, he shot him, you got a damn Spanish ninja with 3 knives coming out of his fist playing a Wolverine cosplayer. You're going to tell me a gun isn't allowed? So I'm just saying we now have to have rules. They have to be agreed upon. So what happens if, okay, cool, fine. So guns aren't allowed. Are wolves? What's stopping Blanca from showing up with like 4 of his vampire buddies? Don't tell me he's not a vampire. But what happens with Blanca shows up with 4 of his vampire buddies? Or Guile shows up with like 4 of his special forces buddies? Or Ken, I don't know, hires Johnny Cage to have the fight for him. And then when Johnny loses, as he would, and then has to do it himself. So we have to have standard set rules. All of a sudden, this ain't a street fight, is it? This is a tournament and a real pain in the ass of one tour. Tour, 2, jeez. So, any questions before we move on? Yes?
Have you ever seen Pete Holmes sketches where HR interviews different fighters from Street Fighter about these issues?
I have not. I really want to see that now. I will check that out. Pete Holmes, that name sounds familiar. Okay, cool. Any other questions? No? Good, fantastic. Okay, so cool. So, yeah. Okay. We're going to pretend for a moment that we have all of this money, apparently from Shadaloo, to entice all of these fighters. We're going to assume for a moment Shadaloo has an HR office that is able to hire travel agents and tour guides and all of this other stuff to make this happen. Sure. So we've got people flying all over the world to engage in fist fights for apparently a lucrative amount of money. How long do you think that's going to go on before the media finds out? How long do you think that's going to go on before the government finds out? You think the Olympic Committee isn't going to find that information out? You think organizations like the UFC isn't going to find that out? How long before other fighters want in on this? It's an invitation-only tournament. How do you get an invitation? All of a sudden, why can't I be involved? A vampire can. An emaciated yogi can. Why can't I be there? I know the reason why, because I suck and I'm a coward, but... So how do you get an invitation? Where are these standards? And also, now you're going to start getting exogenous attention. Corporations. What's going to keep Coca-Cola from rolling up on Ryu and being like, hey, listen up. We will give you $10,000 to put a Coke logo on your gi. Now, Ryu might turn that down because apparently Ryu wants to be the strongest in the world and doesn't care about money, sure. Dalsim will write it across his butt like he is a college co-ed if it means he can feed 10 more kids. Are you kidding me? There ain't nothing Dalsim won't do to raise some money to feed some kids. So now we have corporate sponsorship. See, then we get another problem. So Coca-Cola realized, hey, listen, this Dalsim guy will do anything if we feed kids. So how about this? So why don't we go to Guile and be like, hey, listen, we will give you more moose than you can afford to win in this tournament if you throw the fight. I mean, you're already wanted for manslaughter for shooting the vampire. So we're just saying. So now you've got people meddling, and you think organized crime is going to be involved? And don't say Shadaloo, I swear to God. Don't say Shadaloo, because they're not even the only organized crime. You think the Triad's not going to get in on this? You think I'm sure there are other crime syndicates. I mean, the KKK has been making a resurgence. They're going to get involved in this? Oh, I'm sorry, did that get too close to home? Sorry. Anyway. All right. Any questions? Fantastic, cool. So, let's take a step back, and I want to go through the individual fighters. We've got the primary 16. I don't want to spend a great deal of time discussing each individual fighter, but talking about their logistics. But I do want to just kind of discuss how well they would fare in the tournament. I need to remind you, the best fights are going to be the first round, because after that, ribs are going to be broken, hands are going to be broken. You know, and like if you get a rib broken, you may not be medically cleared to fly. Like that's a serious injury. And if you break a wrist, break a forearm, things like that. So, first off, Chun-Li, the first lady of Capcom, the first lady of video games. Chun-Li is amazing. For many of us in this room, Chun-Li was our first crush. Don't pretend. It's okay, you're in a safe space. Okay? Chun-Li is not going to do well. Chun-Li is a trained acrobat. Cool, great. Acrobats are amazing athletes. Make no mistake about it. Pound for pound, maybe some of the strongest athletes on the planet. They are tremendously powerful and capable. But you do a backflip in the middle of the fight, you lose. Okay? Chun-Li might pull out a first round victory depending on who she's paired up with. But there is nothing to suggest she has any appreciable martial arts experience except for... You wait your damn turn. Except for the fact that she is dressed in, depending on the game, she's either dressed in a yoga outfit or she is dressed in a Chinese acrobatics outfit. Now, allegedly, she is a special agent. Is that where we were going with that? Oh no, where were you going?
She mastered Dan Hibiki's strongest style. That's not real.
I want you to feel ashamed for mentioning that scrub in the presence of real fighters. All of us in this room are now dumber for that. And may God have mercy on your soul. So, who said he was the strongest style?
No, I said he's got the best style.
Get out. So Chun-Li's martial art is officially listed as wushu. Okay, that is a highly stylized martial art. Let's give her the benefit of the doubt and say it is not wushu, but sanchu. Sanchu is Chinese kind of kickboxing. It's a little bit more rough and tumble. It's a little bit more tournament proven. Even then, we run into a major problem, and that is Chun-Li is a tiny Chinese woman. She is going up against much larger opponents. There is a reason every combat sport on the planet has weight classes. A 10-pound weight difference is a huge advantage. Okay? If you are 150 pounds and you fight somebody who is 180 pounds, you lose. Now, we have a fantasy, a myth of the smaller opponent beating the bigger opponent. And it happens, but it is the result of a gross skill differential. The little person is better trained and more thoroughly trained than the bigger person. If you have two people of even remotely comparable skill, the bigger person will very likely win. Yes, there are upsets. Yes, there are outliers. But at the end of the day, a 30-pound weight difference, not a single athletic commission in the country, maybe in the world, will certify that, except maybe Bellator, but that's beside the point. They'll do anything for Coke money. But, oh, I'm sorry, did that hit too close to home? I can hear the comment section going into full gear right now. Anyway, Kimbo Slice was incredible. Anyway, so next we move on to Cammie. Now, Cammie is an interesting case because Cammie is SAS trained, Cammie is SAS trained. So she is a military trained combatant. She is also a brainwashed assassin. Cool, great. That seems like that would give an advantage. Except we're going to lump her in with Guile here for a second because of the same reason. I may anger some people in here and I apologize, but there's some truth to this. Military hand-to-hand combat training teaches hand-to-hand combat training as an auxiliary to weapons work. You do not engage. If you trained in McMap, if you were trained in the Army martial arts program, things like that, they are not training you to fight with your hands and feet as your primary weapon. You have a gun. You would use that gun first. You actually have several guns. If you have been to any of my panels where I talk about swords, like the Swords of Japan panel that I do at Katsucon and other places, the pistol is not considered a primary weapon. You have a long gun. When the long gun runs out, you use the pistol. When the pistol runs out, you use the knife. When the knife runs out, then you use your fists. Remember, what did Guile do when the vampire got out of the taxi? He shot his ass. Because that's what he's trained to do. Cammie is going to be the same way. Now I hear she's also an assassin. An assassin, almost down to the style, is trained to exploit weaknesses. A ninja, a wetworks operator, a black operator is not going to stand and fight. They're going to find their opponent in the bathroom before the fight and stab them in the neck with a screwdriver. Because that's what an assassin would do. One-on-one, Cammie ain't gonna do well. I don't care that she's got those neat tiger stripes across her thighs. That ain't gonna help her. Oh good, she's got a beret. That's just gonna get knocked off. So next, we get to the pretty boy, Ken. Oh. For some of us, Ken was our first crush. It's okay, you're in a safe space, you can admit. And for some of us, it was both of them. It's okay, you're in a safe space, and there's nothing wrong with that. So, Ken, you have a highly decorated, extremely well-trained, extremely rich fighter who wants to beat people up. Now, he has got a huge advantage over his opponent, Ryu. Why? Because Ken is well-fed. Ryu is a homeless vagrant. We can glorify the wandering kung fu monk all we want. At the end of the day, Ryu cannot get meat on a regular basis, whereas Ken can go to McDonald's whenever he damn well pleases. If you have equal skill, equal size, equal training, and we know that they do because they're a pallet swap, the guy with the full belly wins. And remember, Ryu's been wandering around the world sleeping on the ground. That means his back is messed up. Okay? You know, if I walk for an hour without orthotics, my knees start aching. You think that's not going to take a toll? No. Ken's up there sleeping comfortably in that nice bed up in his mansion. He's well rested. He can show up to the fight on time because he's got a driver. Ryu's got to hike 5 miles. He's going to show up already tired. So, right off the bat, Guile, Cammie, Chun-Li, Ryu, they're all eliminated. So now we've got Ken. Ken's the front runner. Okay. So who do we have next? Dalsim, the man of mystery. So we can eliminate Dalsim right off the bat because he is clearly on some kind of chemical augmentation. Okay, you cannot be that skinny and that athletic. He is roided out of his eyeballs. I know he's skinny, but damn, that boy is crazy. He's gonna jump up into the air and dive face first at you. That is meth. And again, we're gonna get back to the fact that Dalsim is lighter than Cammy or Chun-Li. And also for the same reason, because he ain't been eaten. So Dalsim's out, and even if he's not out, even if we go with drug addict wins, which is not a bad way to bet in a fight, we know he's gonna show up to the fight with kerosene in his mouth, because he's gotta shoot a fireball. All you gotta do is punch him right, he's gonna swallow that kerosene. Ain't no one wanna fight with a gullet full of kerosene. So Dalsim is out. Right there, a third of our fighters are gone. This tournament sucks. You want to pay money for this? Okay. So now we've got Ken. Ken is the leader. Fei Long, the movie star. He's going to get his ass whipped just like Johnny Cage. Why? Because he's an imitator. He wants to be Bruce Lee when he grows up. Who doesn't? But he's going to show up and he's going to fight. He is used to stage acting, to screen acting. He's going to be like Elvis, who thinks they're going to go down with one punch. He's going to punch Ken in the face. Ken is a multi-tournament winner. Ken's going to whoop his ass. And again, we come down to Ken is a meat and potatoes boy from America. He's going up against a Hong Kong fighter. There is a weight advantage there. And then we're going to go with the fact that we've got a movie star versus a professional athlete. One of them wins, and it ain't the guy with the Tony. Come on, don't tell me Fei Long hasn't done some, like, theater, okay? He was in the revival of The King and I, okay? He was in the revival of Oklahoma. It was an amazing singing voice, okay? They would have been in Hamilton, but the run just didn't go through Hong Kong, okay? So, now, Ken is still in the lead. Ken's doing well. Ken is all right. Now, Ken faces off against DJ, the Jamaican destroyer. So now you've got DJ versus Ken. You've got a professional fighter versus a DJ. I'm going to give this a throw up because a professional fighter versus a guy who can go for days on end without sleep, I don't know how it's going to go down. And DJ is jacked. Like Dalsim, he is roided out of his eyeballs, but it's the good stuff. I'm going to root for DJ because he also makes music. He's got a side gig. He's got something to fall back on. Okay? He's got something to express himself with. He's a rounded person. Ken, oh, there's some Cobra Kai thing there going on. Like, he needs a hobby, okay? I know he's got that yacht, but there's nothing else there. DJ is a well-rounded person. All right, he's got Maxim written on the side of his feet, shorts or pants, whatever the hell they were called. So, plus, DJ has the background in Western kickboxing, or I think it goes by Dutch kickboxing. I've been seeing that recently. The thing is there, so you've got somebody who is trained in like karate or taekwondo, but with a boxing additive. Oh boy. So why is boxing often so revered amongst the martial arts? And the answer is because typically in boxing training, you spar day one. You put on gloves and you go against an opponent. Now, some trainers have some issues with that, and for good reason, but in general, you will mix it up very early on. You are accustomed to hitting and getting hit. A lot of karate styles do not do that. So we're really at a throw-up here between DJ and Ken. It's going to depend a lot on Ken's training and Ken's background. But on paper, my money is on DJ. When you are pitting kickboxing against karate, you kind of got to go with karate. Plus, again, DJ is a well-rounded person. His soul is complete. Ken is inadequate. Ken's got inadequacy issues because he's still trying to be better than a homeless vagrant from Japan. So we got Ken and DJ going on, okay? So now we have M. Bison. M. Bison loses because if M. Bison can't bribe them, he doesn't win because M. Bison is crazy. M. Bison thinks he's magic. M. Bison is wrong. Okay, the best thing M. Bison's going for him is he may be a drug dealer. Okay, but unless we are going to allow him to use the guns he's going to try to use, M. Bison doesn't win. What martial art does M. Bison use? It's called Lear Drit, according to the Street Fighter role-playing game from White Wolf Games, and oh my God, I'm a nerd that I actually know that. So, what is Lear Drit? It's completely made up. Aha! So now you have a crazy person who's selling drugs who thinks he's made up a martial art. That's an ass whipping waiting to happen. Okay, I know he's got that neat little, hat and he's got that uniform and he's gonna show up with like steel boots on and everything else. DJ's gonna make mincemeat out of his ass. So we get that out of the way. So M. Bison is out. Okay. So now we get the other major bad guy. Vega. Oh, Vega's a problem because Vega's mean. Vega's the only idiot that showed up with a damn weapon. Which means, in theory, he's going to get eliminated. Apparently, we're going to allow this Wolverine cosplayer to just go flipping around. But then we go back to Chun-Li. The fact that Vega is 7 feet tall and weighs 90 pounds. Anywhere else, that'd be Cousin Harold. And you just tell all the kids, just don't ever sit on his lap. But the point is, Vega, don't, it's true. Look, all respect to your Cousin Harold, but come on. Okay, so Vega's gonna go flipping around with knives out of his hand. He's gonna cut himself, he is. He ain't that good. He thinks he's a Spanish ninja. There's no such thing. He's gonna end up with his ass whipped just like M. Bison. Okay, so we've taken care of M. Bison and Vega. So now we have the last of the Shadowloo Lords, Sagat. Oh, damn. The Muay Thai fighter. The big, ugly, angry Thai dude. He loses. Why does he lose? Because he's missing an eye. Did you miss that fact? He can't see a damn thing and has no depth perception. That tends to be important. Yeah. He's gonna get his ass whipped. I know he's tall, I know he's wide, I know he's thick, but he's missing an eye. And I would like to remind you, he is like crippled. He's got that scar across his chest from a fist, okay? No athletic commission is gonna sign off on that. Like he's got some kind of jaundice happening or something that his like dermatological tension was that terrible. So no, and when he gets out there, and again, like Ken, he is obsessed with beating a homeless vagrant from Japan. Anybody that fixated on beating up a hobo is not all there. He is gonna get beat and beat badly. DJ gonna make mincemeat out of him. He and Ken, they're gonna be buddies though. Okay, that is a buddy cop movie that needs to happen. Like, just give me Ken and Sagat riding around town solving murders while they talk about how much they want to beat up one particular hobo. Come on. Balrog. Big ass dude. Boxing, professional boxing, except he sucks. He sucks. Because remember, Shadowloo had to fix his fight so that he could win. And then there's also the fact, remember the last time a boxer fought in the UFC? How'd that work out? Oh, that's right, he lost in the first round. What happens when the next boxer fought in the UFC? What happened? Oh, right, he lost in the first round. Has any boxer lasted longer than the first round? No. So, Balrog is out. Balrog's going to put up a good fight. Balrog's going to be amazing in the, like warm-up package. And when they do like those weird things that they did with like Conor McGregor and Floyd Mayweather where people paid to see them trash talk, which, yeah, I didn't understand that, but okay. Like Balrog's going to be amazing. And then he's going to get his ass whipped by DJ. Okay? So, all 4 Lords of Shadaloo are gone. Almost all our competitors are gone. Who remains? E-Honda. Shut up, I'll get it there. Okay, let's just... E-Honda. Now, E-Honda's a problem. E-Honda is a professional athlete. And E-Honda has 1,200 pounds on all the other competitors. Okay? But E-Honda's background is going to be in sumo wrestling. Despite what you think, sumo wrestling is amazing for combat sports. Okay, I don't know about a lot, but more than a few professional fighters in the UFC and other areas have come from a sumo background. Lyoto, what's his name? Machida. Yeah, they came from a background. Also, how many wrestlers have come from a Greco-Roman background? I don't care what you say, Greco-Roman wrestling is essentially sumo wrestling. The rules are almost identical. So you got somebody who's got a strong grappling background. Okay, he's got to a great start. And again, 1,200 pound weight advantage. A Honda is well poised, but a Honda's going to lose. Why is he going to lose? Because he does not have a good striking game. Okay, he does not have a good striking game, and we know this. Now, his striking game is better than just about everybody else's because he slaps. Throwing a closed fist strike in a fight is a very bad idea. Slaps, much better. The chances of breaking your hand are much lower. So Honda is off to a great start, but he dives head first at his opponent. He loses. So we're down to Ken and DJ. Now, who said T-Hawk? Shut up. Nobody has ever played T-Hawk. Nobody has ever, put your hand down, you're lying. Nobody's ever played T-Hawk. But we're going to pretend for a moment that somebody somewhere in this world has played T-Hawk, even though no one has played T-Hawk. T-Hawk is not going to do well. Why? He clearly has gigantism. He clearly has serious health problems that needs to be resolved with surgery and physical therapy. Okay? And he's like 9 feet tall. He can't like punch down at them. It's not going to happen. But he is a strong competitor. Why? American wrestling background. But again, no striking ability. How do we know this? Because he does that weird pro wrestling chop, okay? You are not going to Ric Flair a street fight, okay? And there's no woo involved whatsoever. That's not happening. So who does that leave us? Yes? What? Akuma's not real. That's a figment of your imagination. So, that's right. Zangief. Zangief wins the World Warrior Tournament for many reasons. One, he has the weight advantage. And unlike E-Honda, it's not all fat. He's freaking huge. How big is he? He's so big that he practices by wrestling bears. Secondly, he has a combat background, okay? He is trained in Sambo, striking and wrestling. Very, very good. Cool. Great. Third, he is not just rich, he has an entire country backing him. He is a national hero in Russia. When you are comparing rich, like Ryu, and you have a GDP, you win. Then we also get to the fact that he will win for the greatest reason of all. He wants to be there. Why is Chun-Li there? She wants revenge for her father. Why is Guile there? He wants revenge for somebody. Why is Ryu there? He's a homeless vagrant. All of these people have terrible reasons. Zangief is there because he wants to be. Okay? Zangief wins with one caveat. There is always a wild card. There is always one person who could throw off everything. And who is that? And I swear to God, if you say Akuma, I will throw an orange at you. Blanca. That damn vampire. Why does Blanca win? Because, what?
Zangief is his food.
Good guess, but there's better. Shut up. Blanca is trained in capoeira. Capoeira has a long history of competing in combat sports and upsetting everything because they're crazy. Blanca also thinks he's an animal. He is clearly deranged. And if there is one thing that beats weight advantage, if there's one thing that beats skill advantage, if there's one thing that beats absolutely everything, it's fucking nuts. And Blanca is nuts. So, Zangief with the win if Blanca doesn't upset. Thank you very much for coming for the panel. Enjoy the rest of MAGFest.